Welcome to Texans on Tap, episode 38, the season finale of Texans on Tap for the 2023-2024 season. I'm Brandon Strange alongside Charlie Palillo and Josh Jordan. Follow them on X at Palillo and at Josh Jordan 975. We will be taking a hiatus from the weekly episodes. That's why it's more important than ever to subscribe to the channel and click on the bell for notifications. That way, you know when we have content drop during the off season, whether it's big free agency news or whether there's news on the coaching cycle. We'll have videos from John and Lance and Josh that'll be in between that stuff on the SportsMap Texans channel all off season. So go ahead and give us a follow there. And then also give us a click on this video to show your support for a job well done by the local men in deep steel blue, Liberty white, and sometimes battle red. And if you're new to the channel and you prefer listening to your podcast, every episode is available on your favorite podcast app. Charlie, it's episode 38. Who's your favorite player? Just kidding. That's the wrong podcast. Before we look ahead, I wanted to kind of look back on the Texans season, kind of appreciate what we had here. So I'm gonna give you guys an opportunity to give me your favorite moments from the 2023 season.
I'm going to cheat and give you two, because one's actually not from the 2023 season, but it poured the foundation for all of it. Lovie Smith's idiotic genius of going for two and winning at Indianapolis to end the 2022 season puts the Texans second in the draft, leaves Bryce Young there for the Panthers to trade up and take, and CJ Stroud sitting there at number 2 for the Texans. Fate intervenes sometimes, I guess. But within the season, boy, a number of options. And isn't that a change from the prior 3 years? I'm going to go with CJ Stroud to Tank Dell for the game winner. 6 seconds to go against the Buccaneers. Just as a standalone, a game-winning touchdown with 6 seconds to go is pretty damn exciting. But it's also where the season could have teetered a little bit. The Texans won that game over the Buccaneers to get to 500, had good vibes and a nice win that they carried to go beat, still with Joe Burrow, Cincinnati the following week. Had they lost to the Bucs 3-5, and you can't say the season would have been over then, but the mountain to climb would have gotten a whole lot higher. And for instance, if they lost one more game than they won, they would not have made the playoffs. So my moment within the 2023 season, Stroud to Dell to beat the Bucs with 6 ticks on the clock.
For me, for the organization, it was the courage to take one of those top 2 quarterbacks, which happened to be CJ Stroud, which is who fell. They didn't listen to the Colin Cowherds of the world saying, oh, wait another year, the quarterbacks are going to be so much better, and kick the can down the road. They had the courage of their convictions. They took CJ Stroud, they took a leap of faith, and it paid off. My favorite play, I'm going to go with the bomb to Nico to open up the second Colts game. Just a thing of beauty, set the tone for that game. And just, I mean, so awesome to see something exciting like that. We've seen the dink and dunk Texans for so long. It's nice to have the team that can go over the top and to have a big play receiver like Nico to haul it in.
I normally don't answer some of these questions. I'm going to answer this one just because there's so many good moments from this season. You guys picked some good ones. The back-to-back interceptions from Steven Nelson and Christian Harris in the Browns game. I thought that was just so amazing because it was in that moment you kind of knew they had it in the bag. And there's been some amazing regular season moments. This season, obviously, a lot of great moments to think about, whether it's from that Steelers game or the Bengals game or the Colts game. But the postseason highlights have been fewer for this team. And I guess the other big, moment, the JJ Watt pick 6 against the Bengals, years ago. But there's just so few of those moments that they're kind of easier to remember. The back-to-back INTs for the D'Amico and his defense and his reaction on the sideline were really special for me. So this next question kind of, dovetails into that. Who's your MVP of the season? And I want to caveat this. This is most valuable person, not most valuable player, because this could be a player, coach, GM, owner, mascot, whoever you guys want to highlight.
Well, look, is this a trick question? It's CJ Stroud. I know there are other elements into, and maybe Josh will snatch up one of those that got CJ Stroud here, but it's CJ Stroud. It's a quarterback-driven league. If you're not at least very good at quarterback, you pretty much have no chance to be a real factor in the NFL. The Texans thought they had it right with Deshaun Watson. Right? He went 12-4 his first season as a starter, 11-5 his first season as a starter. And we know how that over time played out. This time, the Texans seem to really have it right, because not to denigrate Deshaun Watson's play, but CJ Stroud throws the football better than Deshaun Watson ever did here, and probably ever will as a Cleveland Brown or anyone else. So CJ Stroud, with the Texans now set up the next 3 years, Stroud's cap hit below $12 million. It's CJ Stroud, CJ Stroud, CJ Stroud.
No arguing with that, but just in an effort to not be redundant, I'll go on the other side of the ball. I'll go with Will Anderson, based off of all the criticism Sirio and the team received for spending all that draft capital to go up and get him. And for him to actually come out, he just won an award this week for Best Defensive Player of the Year. He played through injury. He was tough. We finally saw this Texans defense actually not be awful against the run. They made a huge stride. I think he played a big role in that. So I'm going to go with Will Anderson.
I'm going to go with Nick Sirio. And I think it's because he drafted, CJ Stroud. I also think, it's a big deal to have hired D'Amico Ryans. He made some really good coaching hires, and also he made that trade up to get Will Anderson Jr. And it was highly criticized. And now, when it's all said and done, looks like it was the right move. So again, like, a lot of luck involved in it too, but sometimes I'd rather be lucky than good. And Nick Caserio was both of those this year. So tip of the hat to the Texas GM for sticking with it and figuring it out this year. So, and he has his work cut out for him. We're going to see what he's made of, because there's a lot of things that have to be done over this offseason to bring this team back and for them to be competitive, because of how many people are going away, because of the, their deals are up. So he has a lot of holes to fill here. One of them may be at the offensive coordinator position. We'll talk about that a little bit later, maybe. But Nick Caserio was on the flagship this week, the Texans radio flagship, and they were asking him about what his focus is going to be over the offseason. He highlighted, I thought this was very interesting and maybe even telling. He highlighted the ability to run the ball, stop the ball, and take away the ball are the things that keep you in games and give you the opportunities to win in January. So I don't know if those three specific things were front of mind and if they're in order by priority, but let's start with the run game, which was, we know it was a work in progress all season. And we saw the pendulum swing all the way from Dameon Pierce being your starting running back to him not getting any touches at the end of the season and Singletary dominating the touches. But now they have some questions to answer there. How do you think they go about reconstructing the run game from the line and a back standpoint?
Yeah, I might modify briefly, Brandon. It was a work of little progress, the run game, with the exception of a couple games, 3 games of Devin Singletary getting off. Obviously, it starts with the offensive line, right? We've seen over the last decade the devaluation of running backs in terms of mega contracts, because if you have a good line and a good scheme, I'm not saying you can just stick anybody back there and it'll average 4.5 yards per carry and given the carries be 1,000-yard back. But you can find running backs. Building out this offensive line is critical. I don't think they have one guy in the offensive line that you're saying just knocks the crap out of people coming off the ball. That includes Laramie Tunsil, who's a very good left tackle. But in the interior, is Juice Scruggs going to be their center? He certainly will get a shot at it next year, going in healthy and being a high draft choice himself. Speaking of high draft choices, it's make or break time for Kenyon Green. As a rookie, he was not good. Year 2, he misses entirely injured, but he's going to be here because the rookie contract fully guaranteed. He cost the Texans more money on the cap if they were to cut him than if they were to keep him. So if he can blossom into just an okay guard, that is one upgrade in the offensive line. The NFL timeline impacts this, right? Free agency, you have the better part of 2 months of it before the draft. So as they assess the market, right? Salary capology in brief, top 5 in the NFL at this point. There'll be extensions and cuts that move the numbers some, But the Texans are number 2 in the league in cap space. Also in the top 5, Tennessee and Indianapolis. Nowhere near the top 5, Jacksonville. This is a very good thing for the Texans, considering the Jaguars either have Josh Allen to pony up oodles and oodles of money to, or lose him. So the Texans, the runway here is very nice, even though the $75 million they have in cap space now is a little bit deceiving, because just as Jacksonville does not want to lose Josh Allen, hey, the Texans have Jonathan Grenard as an unrestricted free agent, and he's going from about $1.3 million on the books to maybe a $15 million per year pass rusher, hitting the market, 27 years old, in the heart of his prime off a 12.5 sack season. Now, his first-year cap number will probably be lower than $15 million, but it's going to be big. And the Texans need to avoid needing to use the franchise tag on Grenard, because that would be over $23 million, carving a big hole into that $75 million. But they can specifically go hard after whoever they deem to be the best interior lineman in free agency. But they also have to assess the other side of the ball. Josh referenced how much better they were this year stopping the run. Sheldon Rankins was a piece of that. He is up. So are the Texans going to pay, right? He was a $4.5 million a year player this year, probably going to command more than that. Are the Texans going to pay Rankins and keep him, or is that something that they're going to have to target in free agency? I think safety remains a glaring need. Jalen Petrie, I think, had a very disappointing second season, but a young player. You hope, that it's just not a linear career path. Wow, as a rookie, as a sophomore, you hope he stabilizes a good third year. But Jimmy Ward, I think, was a failed signing. He's in his 30s. He couldn't stay healthy. Is there a safety out there? And we'll have to see franchise tags with other, Antoine Winfield Jr. with the Buccaneers would be a perfect addition for the Texans. But are the Buccaneers going to let him hit the market? So a lot of moving parts. Free agency, and then the draft.
Yeah, with Jimmy Ward there, Charlie, I'll just start with that. It's going to be a $4 million dead cap for him if they let him go, and his base salary is only like $5.5 million. And D'Amico's got that close relationship with him, so I wonder if they'll actually cut him based on that dead cap figure and what they'll have to pay to replace him. But I'm with you. It doesn't look like he can stay healthy anymore. He'll be playing next year at 33 years old. So that's obviously somewhere to start. Back to your thing with the run game, Brandon. I don't know where they fix this exactly, because Titus Howard and Tunsil are pending health, will be your guys at tackle. Tunsil's kind of a finesse offensive lineman, pass protector. He's not super effective in the run game. So I think it's going to have to come from the interior. Scruggs is, he did well as a rookie, but we saw him in the postseason when he had to go up against some real stiff competition. He really struggled. So I wonder if center is his best position, which brings you back to Kenyon Green at left guard, or if they bring somebody else in for him. I think that's where they can upgrade it, maybe at left guard, because Shaq Mason's still under contract at right guard, and he's been pretty good. So, and running back, that's the other place maybe you can run the ball a little better, is if you get a better run blocking guard. Juice Scruggs gets a little better in his second year, and then you upgrade at running back. But what's out there? Josh Jacobs, possibly Saquon Barkley, who's great but always hurt. Singletary's a free agent. Damian Pierce is cheap, but you saw he wasn't very good in this offense. So, and you don't want to overpay for running back. Like Charlie alluded to, they don't have as much cap space as you think they do. And another part of stopping the run is on the defensive side. Blake Cashman was really good this year, and he's going to be a free agent. So I would prioritize bringing him back.
And, the ability to stop the run was another, thing that Sirio highlighted. The Texans went from being a team that was worst at stopping the run to being one of the best, in no small part thanks to the addition of Will Anderson Jr. on the defense. We touched on a little bit, but what do you think they can do? I mean, I don't really see – I see maybe this is specifically a problem in stopping Lamar Jackson, in containing running quarterbacks, because that really seems to be what you're going to have to do to hit that next level, because the Texans won 10 games. Now, granted, they'll have a first place schedule next season, so the competition stiffens up a little bit, but it seems within the AFC, it's going to be about how do you stop that running quarterback. What can they do on the defense to kind of massage what they have, or add additional pieces to be able to, get a step closer to competing with a team like the Ravens?
one more real plus athlete at linebacker. Cashman, very solid, but not a sideline hellraiser. Denzel Perryman, flat out liability and coverage to me. He was a one and done guy to just bring in a pro to hold a spot. So that leaves Christian Harris, I think, as your key piece, but they need to add one more in the front seven. Now, if they find an outside linebacker that they really like, free agency or draft, great. If not, is it possible that a Will Anderson could stand up more, like he did a little bit at Alabama, and he could move to that outside linebacker role because you find a defensive end you like better than any outside linebacker that you can add. A little more speed in the secondary, right? If Petrie's really set to be a box safety, I guess that's one spot there. And still building out depth, right? When Grenard and Anderson were not playing full snap levels coming off injuries, Derek Barnett gave them some decent work, but he presumably was just a temp signing after the Eagles cut him loose. The Texans lack championship level depth. They enter this offseason with a solid complement of draft picks, and wherever the true free agent dollars available comes in, it's a pretty solid number. But re-signing Grenard is essentially a must. Sheldon Rankins behind him, and then it's not front seven addressing the run game. While Derek Stingley played at a very high level when healthy, and hopefully he establishes that he can stay healthy going forward, Steven Nelson was their marathon man, and he's up also as an unrestricted free agent. You'd think a two-way street, interest in coming back, but everything has its price.
Yeah, that Steven Nelson, but he's 31 years old. How long can he keep that going? How much salary is he going to command? You know what it cost to get a decent corner in free agency. It's going to cost a lot. So they'll have their hands full there. I wonder, with Rankins and Malik Collins at DT, they're a little longer in the tooth, maybe a little bit more youth on the interior. The defensive line could be something they look at. The thing with me, I'm going to be the odd man out here. I like Grenard a lot. I think he had a terrific season. I don't know if I want to pay that huge deal for somebody that's never played a full season of games. I know it's a rough game and people are going to miss time every now and then, but he'll be 27, I believe, next year. So I don't think the injuries are going to decrease, as he gets older. So, but also you got to fill that position. He's really good. Not only the 12.5 sacks, he was great against the run, but down the stretch after that ankle injury, he was just not the same dude. And I like him as a player. It's just a pure, is he going to be on the field enough to justify $15 million a year? That and knowing that you don't have a lot of other money to play with, could that money be better spent somewhere else? But knowing the Texans, they're going to get a deal done with him. I'm just giving a little caution. It's hard to hand out a deal like that to somebody that's just hasn't shown they can stay healthy.
Another factor that Nick Caserio spoke about with Texans Radio was the delicate balance of chemistry. Because there's so much potential for turnover on this roster because of how many are up. So it's like you were able to accomplish so much because the guys bought into each other this year, and you bring a whole bunch of new guys, whether that's free agents or draft picks, that kind of influx this team, and that can mess with some of that. Another factor in chemistry is the coaching. And if the Texans lose Bobby Slowick to the coach cycle here, Josh, we talked about this a little bit. Should the Texans prioritize bringing a lot of these offensive pieces back so that there's already an inherent chemistry within these guys, like a Dalton Schultz and like guys who CJ has a comfort level with? Should they prioritize bringing them back so that way maybe they don't feel the loss of Bobby Slowick as acutely should they lose him?
I think it's something to consider, at least especially for Dalton Schultz. I don't know if you're going to go out and do better than him on the free agent market. Hunter Henry's out there, Mark Gesicki, both of those guys went to, had seasons with the Patriots. Henry's been there for a while, didn't do a whole lot, spent some time injured as well. So, in the draft, with tight ends, they typically take a while to develop. You look at Pitts that Atlanta drafted a few years ago in the first round. He's still kind of figuring it out. Tight end's a tough position to learn on the fly. So I think Schultz, you should prioritize bringing him back. He wasn't perfect. We saw him drop some passes, miss some big blocks, but I think he's your best option. I don't think he's going to totally kill your cap for what he's going to command. At receiver, I think you can move on from Robert Woods. Great veteran, but he's starting to have trouble staying healthy. You don't see the explosion anymore. So, and they're trying to work in Mechie and figure out what they have with him. In essence, they spent the value of a first rounder because of all the trade ups. Even though he was a second round pick, they spent a lot of draft capital to move up and get him in the second round. So maybe he's an option for them. And, Tank Dell is, all reports, should be good to go next year. For me, talk about continuity, I would probably try and work out an extension with Nico Collins this year. I wouldn't want to wait for him to get 1 year closer and be a true free agent and be able to get out of here. So I'd try and bring Schultz back. I'd try and get a long-term deal done with Nico. That's, I think, the most important thing to me, get Nico locked up. Singletary, I'm kind of on the fence. As good as he was, you can find running backs, you can draft him. Dameon Pierce is still on the roster. Who knows if, and he's cheap. Who knows if he could figure it out, or maybe if he could trade him and actually get something for him. So yeah, Schultz and Nico are the two guys are a must for me.
Robert Woods is to the Texans offense for me what Jimmy Ward is defensively. They're pretty easy cut decisions. You have to eat money under the cap, but you will save more. Right? If you cut Ward, $4 million in dead money, but $4 million more saved under the cap. Robert Woods, $4.75 million of dead money, but you save an additional $5 million under the cap. So that's $9 million in savings that you can put in any number of directions, whether it's extension, pursuit of a free agent. As for Slowick, the issue is we don't know who would become the play caller and what would be the synergy between that guy and C.J. Stroud. I wouldn't find on its face the loss of Slowick to be devastating. Now, the Texans have a couple of talent concerns that we address some, certainly in that offensive line. But the truth is, you take out the Cleveland Browns game, and they didn't score 25 points offensively in 2.5 months to end the season. So it's not like Slowick's established as one of the great play callers in the NFL and a can't-miss branch of the Kyle Shanahan tree as a head coach. Right? I don't think he's thought of as Sean McVay or Matt LaFleur of 1 year as a coordinator. Ideally, he stays here and becomes that kind of hot ticket because he and Stroud are simpatico, and the Texans have, if you want to think of it as natural growth or progression. So without knowing who would take Slowick's role, I'm not going to say, oh, they're hosed if Bobby Slowick becomes a head coach, but the antenna would have to be up.
Am I crazy in thinking that the presence of C.J. Stroud makes maybe losing Bobby Slowick not as impactful, just from the standpoint, again, like he's a good coach, not trying to take away his flowers or anything, but doesn't the presence of C.J. Stroud allow you to attract really good candidates to come because they're going to see what CJ was able to do for Bobby Slowick's profile and go, I want to work with that guy because he's my stepping stone to being a head coach. Am I crazy?
Well, you might be crazy, but not because of that. Okay. Clearly, and I'll mention Russell Wilson. Seattle, they seem to perennially have iffy offensive lines. And post Marshawn Lynch, not much of a running game. But, let Russ cook. A great quarterback can cover for many problems as long as that great quarterback can stay healthy. So, yeah, C.J. Stroud, attractive to coordinators who might be on the market or position coaches angling to move up, and at least of equal, if not greater importance, free agents, offensive linemen thinking, I might want to block for a 22-year-old star, already near superstar level quarterback who I know is going to be there for years, a franchise, out of nowhere in real ascension mode. Just to throw one name, and I have no idea if he'll get to market, Kevin Dotson of the Rams is probably thought of as one of the couple of best guards in free agency. He'd be a good fit, if Kenyon Green does not blossom. Credit to Michael Dieter for, playing when asked, but he was just overpowered and overmatched at times, be it center or guard. So Slowick or no Slowick, most players in the league, if you would ask them, name the offensive coordinator for Team X, no idea. I asked them who the quarterback is for the Chiefs or the Bengals or the Bills or the Texans. They all know that guy.
Yeah, that's for sure. Of course, coaches are going to want to work with CJ. That makes all the sense in the world. And I wonder, depending if they do replace Slowick, maybe somebody will have some better answers for the run game. it's not lost on me. He was the passing game coordinator for the 49ers, and then he comes here and the passing game's really good. CJ's leading the lead in passing yards before he got hurt. At least he was in the top 3. But they really struggled to run the ball all year. You know, a couple games here or there, Singletary got loose, but they just couldn't get that done. I think a guard is definitely in play, like we talked about. So we'll see how they approach it. We were talking with John and Lance the other day. If he does leave, you know, maybe Clint Kubiak from the 49ers might be somebody they look at, because D'Amico might be at least excited that he's from the 49ers. He's had some time under Shanahan to learn some stuff. So maybe that's somebody they look at, or maybe they just promote Gerard Johnson. I don't know, but they got to get that run game figured out. CJ just can't be sitting back there all the time. And Charlie pointed out too in one of his articles on SportsMap that the pass protection had some issues too for CJ. It just wasn't the run protection. They got to find a way to shore that up. And if Kenyon Green's not the guy, I mean, he's starting to run out of time on that rookie deal if we don't see something this year. But I don't think you want to go into the year counting on that. I think you have to have some kind of backup plan at guard just in case, because we've talked about it, but we haven't hit on it in this podcast. Their competition level is going to go way up with the first place schedule next year. They're going to play a lot of the teams that can really run the ball and can really stop the run. So you have to anticipate it's going to get more difficult, and the fan base is going to expect more after what we saw this year. So they're going to have to move some stuff around and figure this thing out.
From last place schedule to first place schedule, from playing the horrible NFC South to not great, but better than the South, NFC North. You know, their strength of schedule game is the Dallas Cowboys. It's a regular season game, meaning it's a tough one, as opposed to getting the Arizona Cardinals as their strength of schedule game outside the conference this year. And the Texans had 9 home games in 2023. Well, that means in 2024, it's 8 home games, 9 road games. So as I mentioned last week, the team could be better, but the record might not necessarily show how much better.
Well, funny you should bring that up, because I was going to ask you guys to project the win-loss record for next season. You did not see this coming, so that's fun. So here we go. Prediction time. Texans win 10 this season. They have the first place scheduled next season. Give me your win projection.
Before free agency, before the draft.
It's a way too early look. It's a way too early look.
17-0.
Thanks, John Granado.
I'll actually stick with the 10-7.
Okay, I'll go 9-8.
9-8. There you go. All right. Well, yeah, it's definitely a way too early projection, but hey, that's the fun part about it, right? Is even on game 1 at the beginning of the season, it's probably way too early because you don't know what the team looks like at the end of the season. Don't believe me? Go back and look what game 1's roster was compared to what game 17's roster was. That's going to be it for this season. That sounds weird to say, but that's going to be it for this season of Texans on Tap. Remember, follow us now on the YouTube channel so that way you get your notifications during the off season of when we have new content. And in between that, we're going to be doing stuff with John, Lance, and Josh as always. So there's always going to be stuff happening on the SportsMap Texans channel. Go give us a follow on your favorite podcast app. I want to say thank you to everyone who listened this season, watched this season. We really do appreciate it. Over the last 90 days, had over 100,000 unique viewers that viewed us on YouTube. We could not have predicted that sort of response. So we really, really, really appreciate all the support you guys have shown. So as far as the most valuable people go, well, it's really you guys. So we will see you next season. Go Texans.